I've been feeling this whole week is just anger and exhaustion.
That seems reasonable for Venus. It really does. You know, I feel like that is a reasonable response to 5 months of difficulty, like consistent.
It's true.
Hi, Anita.
She has been in not happy places since right before Christmas.
Yeah. I have no idea what my chart, how my chart aligns with that.
That would have been 6th house for you, I believe, because you're the fixed angle. So Leo's your 1st house. Aquarius would be your 7th house. So yeah, Capricorn would be your 6th. So she spent most of that time in your 6th house, which is daily drudgery and work.
Yeah, that's the way I'm feeling right now. Just like, and you throw in a little chaos from time to time, and I don't know. I really want to go on that cruise.
There's Neptune.
Yeah. And it's a year away.
Let's see. I'm thinking of, you guys know, if you had the experience of working really hard for, the whole week or a series of weeks, and then as soon as you have rest time, you get sick.
Oh, yeah.
So, I feel like for people who are feeling really just completely wrung out, once Venus has exited that, Capricorn and Aquarius, it's the sick time, which is also the recovery time. But it's like, can't wait to enjoy this vacation. I'm going to relax, and, things are going to be chill, and people are going to feed me grapes. And, it's just a giant.
Yeah, I know.
But then you get cheated out of the enjoyment that you earn from all of the hard work that you put in. It's like, it's such a, there's that Jupiter Murphy's law.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder if, like you and I, we cycle. When something ends, we jump into the next thing and jump into the next thing and jump. We don't take the moment to really celebrate our accomplishment.
True. That could be. This is what I'll say with someone as a 6th house Taurus.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah.
Can't go fast. Would like to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think for those people who have this cycle of, like, I don't know if you'd call it boom and bust. That's probably not the right term, but like massive work and fallout. Venus in Pisces is so insistent on leisure and rest that it's kind of helpful. It's like a helpful instruction in the consequences of not setting boundaries, I guess, if that makes sense. Which is kind of a bitter pill to take sometimes. Because, why should we have to stop? We can just go, especially if we really identify with a workhorse mentality. But the uncompromising attributes of planets that are in their exaltation, they can be heavy-handed. It doesn't have to be Saturn to be heavy-handed. Like, Venus is insistent on things being very much Venusian, whether it's overgiving to other people or it's insisting on quality leisure or pay the consequences. I feel like there are lessons here that we can learn, as unpleasant as they might be sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Venus is definitely being a diva right now.
Diva for sure. I wrote that down in my notes, actually.
Diva. Yeah, I know I have to finish these 2 books. I lost the motivation this week because I had the launch and it just kind of went, wah. It went, but nowhere near what I thought. And I'm like, okay, what can I learn from this? And I'm like, I got to get the other books done. What can I learn from this? I got to get the other books done. It's like, stop. Where could I have done something different? And I don't know how the stars play into it. Maybe it was just a bad week for everybody. You know, the first week of April, taxes are coming. So, you know, I didn't even think of that. But, you know, all of these things rolling in at once.
Yeah, it's been like
You know,
2 weeks of struggle.
Yeah. I mean, how do you pick the most optimal time to release a book?
We were
There's a
actually
question.
talking about that last time. We need to do a whole show on electional astrology now, because that was an
Yeah.
interesting topic, and I am not even qualified to talk about it.
Right. And I wasn't on that show because I think that was one of my, that was the weekend I was at the christening. It's like, which one was it?
That's the
Yeah,
one you
I'm
called me
still
the day
guinea pig
before.
myself. I'm
Yeah.
still just trying things out. So there are a number of really talented electional astrologers that can speak to that.
Okay, cool.
I think we'll definitely have to touch on that topic. But before we get too deep into the weeds, we should probably say hi to everybody.
Hello.
We just kind of jumped on in today.
Yes.
So for those of you out there, thank you for hanging out with us. This is Spilling Ink. We are the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the publishing industry. And this is our mid-month astrology check-in, where we're going to attempt to read the stars. And we've got Renee back again. Renee, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
It's my pleasure.
Now, I know since we talked the last time, you were able to get your podcast up and running. And I've got to say, I was blown away. I thought it was wonderful.
Thank you so much. So I have a YouTube channel, but the idea is you can watch or listen. So it's very visual. I have a chart out and I take it step by step, but also I'm speaking the degrees and positions of the planets. So if you don't have a chart in front of you, you can just be listening to it. And you can find it at just Google Renee Lindsay. I'm just on YouTube, just barely starting out. My first video was an Aries ingress, and that is very often read as like the chart of the world, kind of a year ahead, you know, for the whole world. So I did draw upon a number of astrologers and other thinkers, philosophers, anthropologists, and critical theorists to really kind of get into what we can expect this year. Kind of my long, what is it, a cold take? It's not a hot take. It was about an hour long, really digging in deep. And the one thing I didn't get to do in that first video that I'm starting to do now is get more dynamic with a kind of animated image of myself so that I can bring in some humor. And I'm really excited to be able to do that. And that will be a more, I guess, you might miss some jokes if you were just listening, but I want to be able to eventually balance between a topic-heavy presentation that you can listen to like a podcast and something that's a little bit more like a kind of an astro cartoon, if you want to watch, that has more to do with transits. And I do have another video coming up on the 28th for the eclipse on the 30th, but we can talk about that later. Sorry, shameless plug, I guess. I'm new to this thing.
Absolutely.
No,
that's what you were supposed
what we're here
to do.
for.
I have to ask, how do you do the animation? Because I thought that was adorable.
Well, so what I do, first of all, I'll just, I have my 10th house, my career house is Virgo. So I'm very organized, I'm very systematic, and just have I have a step-by-step process. I begin with a sketch, and that's actually not true. I begin with an idea of an expression. I sketch it out, and then I transfer that sketch to Illustrator. I trace the sketch. I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but I trace the sketch so I can get a really clean vector and color it. And then that, depending on whether or not I'm blinking, for example, that would be 2 sketches that look exactly the same except for the eye position. I'll make sure to export that as a PNG file, which is clearer than JPEG. And then I'll put that into my video editor after I've storyboarded and everything. It's a whole assembly line of stuff that I've got going on to make sure that all the pieces fit together. But I actually really, really enjoy all of that process. The only thing I think that I really struggle with effort wise, that is to say I get into a flow and I'm totally exhausted afterwards, is writing out the script. After outlining, after, gathering my research, sitting down and writing, as any authors can tell you, you can really get into a flow, but you've got to recover after, because it will pull lots out of you.
So what kind of video editor do you use? I'm curious.
Yeah. I did
need a
take a
decent one.
class. Let's see. I'm so sorry I interrupted you. Please continue.
No, that was my question.
A few years ago, I took just a really basic digital art class that used Adobe Suite. So I'm
Okay.
just using that for now.
Oh, cool.
I did experiment with a few, but ultimately I'm going to go with what I'm more comfortable with. And the big bonus with Adobe Premiere Pro that's in their suite is that they have a caption generator so that I can make sure and close caption my videos. It's super important for me.
That's awesome.
And
Awesome.
since it's scripted, the transcript is ready, but the captions, that's another beast entirely. So.
So how long from start to finish would you say it takes to make your hour-long video?
Well, since it's the first one, I will say it probably took the longest that any hour-long video will take, but I'd say about a month.
Okay.
The half-hour video I've got going, I've got anywhere between 15 and 19 or 20 different avatars. I'm giving myself 2 weeks. And that is animation plus outline plus research plus script plus recording plus sound editing plus video editing. So it is about 6 days a week. I don't work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, but I do work that consistently. And the big lesson for me lately has been to stop when I feel like my eyes are glazing and not reach for coffee, because otherwise I won't be able to continue. And it's very easy when you're starting a venture to burn out at the beginning. And that's really not what I want to do. So about a month, but it was the first one. So I'm expecting the process to streamline.
Okay.
As I go.
And if it's a labor of love, it's worth doing. It doesn't feel as burdensome as if you're working on something that's not exactly speaking to you, something that you just kind of have to do rather than want to do.
I actually find it pretty much impossible to do things that are not passion projects, which has been a real problem trying to find employment, which is why I'm here doing this thing. Like there's that Taurus. I won't do it. It's like a kid that pulls dead weight, won't do it.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
But it's good though. You found something that you like, that you feel passionate about, that you can work on, that works to your strengths.
Thank you.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely.
At long last, it's been a journey.
Anybody making an avatar, making artwork and making it animated, I'm in awe of, because I can only do stick figures.
Thank you. It's funny, actually. I had never thought this sounds really weird, maybe. It sounds weird just saying it. Well, there's such a commodification of art, right? Like you can't do art unless it can be fancy or sold or valuable or whatever. But along the same lines, I feel like there's another level to that where it's like you can't do art unless it's work, unless it's hard, unless you stress yourself out and push yourself. And I completely surprised myself into like laughing at some of the expressions that I made and thought, oh, I don't actually want to do anything else because this is hilarious. And even if nobody else thinks it's hilarious, I'm laughing and I'm working. And that is totally revolutionary for my work history. So I think there's really something there that's certainly I didn't have anybody say to me, make sure you're laughing when you work. There's kind of this mindset that you need to suffer. There's like, you need to suffer and work. And that,
serious.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that working hard needs to only be fun or pleasant, or that, digging deep doesn't have its own value, because it does. I'm talking about this kind of unexpected joy as a way to like balance the craft. And I will also say, just based on our what we know about astrology now as opposed to like 20 years ago. There is in the ancient world, I don't know if they told a lot of jokes back then. I sort of kind of like, I'm sure they did, but
I'm sure
it
they
seems
did.
very serious and stodgy. And so I feel like sometimes astrology can get very persnickety or even just heavy. And the question then is, well, it's kind of like if you read comedy, does that mean that it matters less than if you read a book that's serious? You know, it's a totally different space.
Mhm.
So, is it less impactful or important? I think it's different. You know, it's a different approach to astrology, using jokes and poking fun, and using a bit of a lighter hand. That still, hopefully, the goal is still thoughtful. You come away going, yeah, but you know, and hopefully, I mean, that's kind of where I'm going, and where I hope that astrology can go is not super serious and not super shallow, but this kind of in between space that has a lot of flexibility.
It's a lot of food for thought from somebody who's, never followed it and never done anything. And, the first time I had a reading was from Katie. So it was like, okay, some things make sense. And it was nicer, it has both of the, the drama side, the serious side. And then there's, the fun side of it. Like, okay, we have this. Can we predict what's going to happen next? And as a writer, that's exciting. So,
yeah, you're already plotting it in your head.
Yes, exactly. So to have humor embedded in it is wonderful too, because humor is like my biggest weapon in real life. Maybe not in my books, but in real life, I strive to make people smile and laugh, and I'm fun in my daily meetings, because most of the time I can, get people chuckling.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I'm totally different. You know, people say, well, you got to laugh or you got to cry, right? And I'm like, no, but I cry and I bleed, like it's just like very serious. Like, why would you laugh? This is so serious. Why isn't your soul rending? Like this really dramatic kind of like existential phoenix moment. So imagine my surprise when I'm cracking jokes in my astrology. It was just, yeah.
That's awesome, though. That's
yeah,
growth.
yeah, it's great. It's great.
I have to turn this off.
Little dose of humor goes a long way. I mean, it can definitely make some of those trickier transits. The blow is a little softer if you can deliver it with a laugh.
Yes. You're gonna be in for a world of.
I keep finding it interesting how typical expectations of a certain transit continue to play out in the opposite way, as far as I've seen it. It's like I was saying before we went live. I expected Mars and Saturn coming together to be kind of tricky, but it wasn't until Venus left Aquarius that it got tricky. And Venus is heading into her exaltation. She should be happy. And things are getting more struggle worthy. It's like, why is this not happening the way it's supposed to?
It's a guide. It's not.
I still say Jupiter is Murphy's Law. If I expect something, if I say it, I will not get the way I said it. Learn to keep my mouth shut.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point about whether there is an absolute meaning behind a planet or a sign. And, this is not settled. If it were settled, we wouldn't have philosophical arguments. So it's really up in the air. And so I'm going to, poke that hornet's nest a little bit and say, well, it's probably way more subjective than people think. Or, is empiricism actually that much proof? Or whatever. Like, what is the yardstick with which to measure truth and accuracy when we're trying to predict something? So I think it's completely valid to be overwhelmed, exhausted, sick, and all that kind of stuff when a planet goes into it. It's the sign of its exaltation, particularly after it has met with things that seem to be quote unquote challenging, which I mean, or we could just say hard, really difficult. We could say, bad, but not everybody experiences that way. And so then astrology gets kind of messy, or personally, I think that's where astrology gets interesting, is when it's not so easily packaged. Although, I mean, I guess the price of that interesting is that there is a certain measure of certainty that gets called into question, and that can be really uncomfortable. For a while, to be like, no, but this is what it means, right? And it forces us into this quandary of, free will and fate, which I also think is nowhere near settled. But,
Right.
I guess it's worth kind of examining. It's worth speaking to these different ways that astrology presents itself, on the personal plane, and kind of laying them out next to each other and seeing how varied they are, because that also gives the chance to see if there is some kind of tonal undercurrent that, brings them together, right? Instead of getting into like a finger pointing, you're wrong, or this is wrong, or I'm wrong, or, whatever, which it may be like, that's what Twitter's for. Sorry, but that's how I feel about it.
Oh, Astro Twitter's fun.
Yes.
I don't know.
It's a
I have mixed
spectator
feelings
sport.
on it, but Twitter it's one of those things where it's not my scene. So half the time I'm going, what is happening here? Anyway.
We just got a like that popped up after you said that too.
Yeah. I mean, initially when you did my reading, you had factored in what was it, in January and the beginning of February, you thought I would have more of a challenge with my creativity. And maybe it was just the psychology in my head, because I did not have the challenge then. I'm hitting that now when you said by this time I would be out of it. It's really strange.
Yeah, because again, my view was that once Venus was moving into her exaltation and away from the malefics that she's been basically fighting against, it should be a breath of fresh air. And yet,
yeah, it's strange.
But there's also, we talked about, I think Renee, it was you who said something about lancing a boil when Mars and Venus came together and pushed through Aquarius. They're working on some heavy stuff, and while it's not pleasant, perhaps down the road, the after effects of the issues that are springing up right now will result in something pleasant.
That was when Mars and Venus met Pluto. Yeah. That was the stuff that's buried that comes to the surface. Yeah. So
that was a particularly interesting day for me. It was, actually, I should say, it was like 48 hours of no. Everything no. My car broke down. $400 payment turned into $1,400 because multiple things were broken. Things that I couldn't just go, oh, we'll wait to fix it later, because it was like steering column related.
Ooh,
you don't want that breaking.
You need that. You need that, and you need brakes. Those are the two things you absolutely need.
And then I was trying to get my kids' doctor's appointments all lined up, because the school had called me and said my kids weren't up on their shots. Well, a bill from 2019 resurfaced, and they wouldn't see my kids until it was paid. Well, I just shelled out $1,400 for my car. And I had to cancel, trips that I was supposed to go on. So it was a lot of no.
A lot of bad no's. Yeah.
Painful no's. But the lancing the boil part, I would say, is you have your life. The brakes didn't go out. The steering didn't go out.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna, but I do feel like sometimes there can be close calls or bullets dodged that we don't always know about. Not to minimize the absolute stress of the situation, though.
I
Mhm.
made it through. I mean, in hindsight, while it's annoying and frustrating, still made it through. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
far I'm 100% on my getting through the bad days.
good.
So,
Good.
we have been kind of dancing around what's happening right now. Did you want to go into like current transits in more detail, Katie?
Yeah, I did. So last month we left off with Mars and Saturn conjoining in Aquarius being the one that we were watching to
Yeah.
see how that kind of affected everyone. And for me, that's also a Mars return.
Mhm.
So I have Mars and Mercury tied together at that same degree that Mars was running into it. So it was like, I think it was 20 degrees and 21 degrees of Aquarius. And I had honestly expected that to be a hard day, but it turned out to be actually a really good work day. I was filled with, like, I call it get shit done energy. I was just
Mhm.
powering through things. So I'm wondering how that kind of affected you guys as well, if that was a good or bad, because I like looking at these in retrospect and seeing what was the assumption, what happened, and then color the perception going forward.
What day was that? And I can basically.
Oh, where's my
That
note?
was April 4th.
Okay. So that
So
was the
Monday.
day. Yeah. Monday was a good day here. Tuesday was the shit fest. Sorry for my language. That was the day, Monday we were informed that the roofers would be here Tuesday. So all day pounding on the roof. We had the dog sitting, and the dog got sick. We don't know if it was because we gave him steak juice on his food the night before, or just the stress of being here without his owners or not. So we had that. I had my release party, so I was dealing with that. Stuff at work kind of went sideways, so I was dealing with that. So it was just a day of jumping and putting out fires and doing these things, and it was just hugely stressful. And by the end of the day, I just wanted to crawl into bed and forget the day.
Well, this is a slower transit, so it may peak on a particular day, but it's kind of, a couple of weeks before and a couple of weeks after, really, just building up. So it's a bit of a misnomer on slower transits to bring it to a single day. So that certainly fits in with the theme, though. Mars is a hammer, and the roof as Saturn, those two coming together to make sure that things are structurally sound, but all that's it having to go and do and all of that busyness.
My husband had to learn a new way to communicate because none of the people who are here spoke English. So I had to
Interesting.
figure out how to communicate with them.
I just have to point out, Aquarius is your 7th house and it's his first house.
Okay.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Because he was like, he went out to tell them something and nobody knew what he was saying and he didn't know what they were saying. And he came back in, he was all flustered. And then he figured it out. He used, an app on the phone. Thankfully, we have cell phones that do that these days.
So Aquarian to use technology for that.
Yeah, exactly. If my daughter-in-law was here, she speaks Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian and English. So, but she was off with my son. Actually, she's not my daughter-in-law yet. But yeah, it was an interesting week. By Wednesday, things had started to calm down. Thursday, they smoothed out, and yesterday they were fine. It was really like a big boom. So,
if I'm not mistaken, I think Tuesday was the day Venus made her ingress.
The 5th, yes, that would be Tuesday. Venus into Pisces, and Pisces is sometimes associated with chaos. Just all kinds of stuff going everywhere. The modern ruler of Pisces is Neptune. Just think of hurricanes and deep ocean and all kinds of stuff. So let's see. For me, I've had to adjust my transportation. So to do more public transport and bicycle. A couple of reasons, but it's having to make decisions on what is safest for me and what is best for my budget. So that has been a big adjustment of many different things, but especially like time, where I put time. And I think that will be a long-lasting adjustment. So
you had to
more
budget
bikes
your
and
time.
trains.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And budgeting
And
your time properly. Yeah.
right, lots of rearranging, but also I don't know if there are people listening who have been suddenly without a vehicle and having to figure out how to get from A to B, or not being able to drive for whatever reason. If you're sitting on transport or you're on a bike, there is a certain measure of limbo that can turn into solitude. Like you're just waiting for the train. You're waiting for the train to go. You could be reading while you're waiting or whatever, but it's kind of like me time, de facto me time. So there is a certain measure of having one's attention pull back as well. So this Saturn-Mars conjunction also happened on top of my Mars, right in between my Mars and Mercury, in the 3rd house of short journeys, because I will not be taking my bike to the next city too far. So yeah,
So
that's how
very,
that played
very
out.
topical.
Yeah. And
So
it
now
was I just want to say real quick, I can talk about it now, a week later or a few days later, more or less straightforward, but it was a bit of a shock. Like, oh my gosh, I have to adjust so much stuff. And it's nice that I have options and I can choose options, but it was a difficult day because of the implications. And even if there are really good or necessary changes that need to happen, the implications reverberate with Mars Saturn. Oh, this has to get done, and this means stuff that reaches out into time, So
Yes.
We've got another year of Saturn in Aquarius before she finally leaves.
Yes, and a retrograde happening in June to October, I think. And Saturn will go back to its Mars conjunction point. So it's going to go back, and it's possible that these themes get revisited in some way. I think that it will go to 20 degrees, but I need to double check that. So Saturn and Mars conjoined at 22 degrees of Aquarius, and it's going to go forward up to 25 and then station and go back. And I think it's to 20, but I'm not entirely sure. I
believe you're right, because I was looking at that transit all year, because that is literally railroading my natal Mercury and Mars.
Yes, same.
So all year, just back and forth and back and forth, and that slow Saturn energy in my 4th house tends to affect that imbalance I have between figuring out how to be mom and do mom things and have a life and do work and get work done and still keep a roof over our head. So there's been a lot of the expectation was a lot of stilted negative energy. What I'm finding is it's misappropriation of energy.
Yeah. That's actually a really great way to look at Saturn. No to one thing means yes to something else.
And that's kind of the lesson for this year, is I really need to get that balance, because I can't continue to exist this way. I will eventually burn completely out. So I need to learn that lesson of finding the balance, getting the work done, and having a life too. Whether that means, me time or going out with friends or whatever, I need to not ignore that other part.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, and then you get to do some fun stuff. But, whether I see you get excited about the yes. Combat Con. yes, it's a lot of work, but that's something that I can see the spark in your eyes when you're talking about it. You are really excited about this. So yes, it's work, but that's feeding some of your
Yeah,
need for
not to take us
connection.
too off topic, because I don't want to miss the transits that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
But the nodes this year for me are in that 1st and 7th house, where it's the south in the 1st house, so more of a diminishing energy, less focus on the self, and the north node is in Taurus for me, which is my relationship house. So it's almost like I'm being pushed into go out, go do things with other people, whether it's work or fun or whatever. And it's been manifesting so far this year in a lot of requests to do extra podcasts, being shuffled into, managing the writers team for Combat Con, getting random
building the
emails for,
connections.
if I can do panels when I go to conventions. So it's I'm being pushed towards, getting out a little bit more, but I still have that Saturn energy sitting at home going, you got to figure out what to do with the energy. You can't do it all.
Right.
Well, these are Saturn transits. It's a 30-year, 29-year lesson, which I think is really nice. One of the things about astrology when we can contemplate is to give it a bit of perspective, so it doesn't necessarily change the things that are happening. But if I think to myself, okay, the last time Saturn came around to Mars, Mercury, I was 12. So here we go. We're kind of ending, I think to myself, ending a cycle that has been 28, 29 years in the making and starting something new that's going to set the tone for the next almost 3 decades, which, is kind of, when it's not overwhelming, it's actually quite exciting, because what you're doing now will not have to be revisited in the same way for 29 years. I mean, there will be a bit of a check-in, because Saturn, you can track to 7-year transits, the first Saturn square and a Saturn opposition and so on. But it's not quite the same thing as beginning anew in that kind of initial doing things for the first time in a new way. Saturn really is a freight train. It's super hard to move it one way or another, but once it gets going, it's like, well, but if you're going to do something, do it right. Reallocate the energy, take stock, see what you can do, see what you can't. Oh, you think you can do that? Guess what? I'm going to put an anvil on your chest until you recognize you cannot do that. You need to figure out a different way. And then and that's kind of like, I feel like we can stop there and be like, oh no, I can't do anything. But the other side of Saturn is, investment. So like, well, if you try it a new way, you're going to get this just as much result. And maybe it's like way better than you thought. There's a proportional delivery of Saturn. It will deliver what you can't do in ways that you can't ignore, but it will also deliver what you can do in ways that you can't ignore. Both happens at the same time. I'm going to get off my soapbox. My exalted Saturn is like, hey, let me tell everybody. No, just kidding. So, but that said, I do think that we tend to be afraid of Saturn a lot because it can be painful. But that's only half the picture.
Well, and I joke that Saturn is like the mommy dearest, but the underlying theme with that joke is, yes, it may be harsh and it may not be the way you would hope to be punished when you step out of line, but it's done because it's trying to get you on the right track. So it's done with love.
Also, if you hang your clothes on wire hangers, they won't wear as long. So it's a mommy dearest joke.
I really relate to mommy dearest. Yes. So that's my way of joking through the pain of, I got a softer touch with if I say it this way, but the theme is still there. It's you're going to have to do things right or you're going to pay the price. Whether that's pay the price of no energy, pay the price of, anxieties, meltdowns, pay the price of losing things. If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be corrected. And I think that's kind of why the Saturn return, some people get hit really hard by the Saturn return. Some people seem to skate through it. And I think if you're on the path you're supposed to be on, It's not as bad, but it's a course correction if you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was very drastic. Not horrible, but very, very drastic.
I
Like,
think there are.
literally.
Sorry, please continue.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking, hard to say about a Saturn return. There are lots of factors to keep in mind. I don't know if we could. I don't know if I would be able to reduce it to whether or not we're on the right path or not. But I do think there is something to be said with how resilient we are, or have become, to that point. And, you know, the nice thing about Saturn is if you maybe have less resilience than maybe you want, well, there's your opportunity. Saturn return will help you become very resilient. That's age 29-ish, 28, 29. So, yeah. Saturn
All right.
return was, anyway.
We could do a whole talk on Saturn return.
That is true.
It's just a fun topic.
Mm.
It is. But I could do that with pretty much any of these astrology topics because I don't know. It's like geeking out over stuff. I love just diving in and dissecting everything. But let's see. So we've talked about Mars and Saturn's conjunction. We talked about Venus's ingress into Pisces. I did want to ask, just based on house topics. So Pisces for me is 5th house. Pisces for Jane would be 8th house. And that would be 4th house for you?
4, yes.
So what are we anticipating thematically with Venus going into these houses?
Well, Venus at an angle, so we'll say the 4th house, but also it could be the 1st, 7th, or 10th. It's an initiating kind of energy quality. So Venus and Pisces in the 4th, I'm paying particular attention in whether or not I feel a flow in my house. So that could be anything from making sure that my house is tidy and clean, anywhere to making sure that my office has a good workflow. I don't know if it's that much about my children, but I have been thinking also about magical practices or connection with the occult, because the 4th house also has to do with that. And Pisces is a bit, ethereal or non-material, let's say, anyway. So I have definitely felt more of an inclination, let's say, to feel connected to non-material things as a foundational space, like kind of a baseline, I suppose.
Okay.
It's a bit abstract. I hope that made sense.
No, it does, because you're not only working from home, but you live in the home. You have to exist there for a lot of times. You're the Venus theme of making it that welcoming, flowing, functional space so that you can do everything you need to do within it. That would make a lot of sense to me.
And inviting relationship with the non-material, that's the Pisces part, as something that is more frequent than not.
Okay. Jane, what are you dealing with right now with eighth house topics? 8th house is always a weird house.
Yeah, I was just looking at that, and I'm looking at this. It says, other people's possessions, we can infer from these general fields. There's also rules, legacies, heritages, and wills.
And anxiety.
And, okay. Well, we're trying to get a will in place. My mom decided that she was going, last time I was down, that she was going to start giving away her jewelry to get it. Yep. Well, I'm the only one that's not freaking out. I know someday they are going to pass, but it's like, okay, if this is what makes you comfortable, sure. And she gave me things, and she has stuff for my sister, and and I got some antique guns for my father. So all of those seem to align with what's happening right now, based on that, it's all about, it says sex and stuff like that, and taboo and death. I'm hoping that third one, well, my daughter's dog,
Yeah.
Death. Yeah, let's not talk about sex because I'll turn all bright red.
Suffice to say that the 8th house themes are playing out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that part of my life is pretty good. So everything else is, and anxiety, a little bit. When normally I thrive in a chaotic environment. I was overwhelmed on Tuesday,
Mm.
and that was unusual for me. So
Okay.
that's the only, and looking at that listing, because I Googled it because I don't know all the houses as well as you guys. So yeah, that kind of makes some sense on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got an upcoming Venus, Jupiter, Neptune conjunction later this month. I'm kind of wondering how that will play out with the themes that we've already experienced with it in the different house placements.
Mm-hmm.
And Mars will be in sign.
Oh, that's true.
Mars is going in. It won't be on top of those planets. Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter will be really close. Mars will be about 10 degrees away, a little bit more, 15. So, but we'll still be in Pisces. So it'll be 4 planets in Pisces. 4 fairly slow planets in Pisces.
And that's you said something about the 30th.
Oh, yes, there is an eclipse on the 30th.
Okay,
yes,
because we're opening the campground on the 30th. So, okay. Hopefully we are.
There is a debate about whether or not eclipses are auspicious, or that is to say, fortunate, or not. And, it really just depends on who you talk to. And I also think it kind of depends on the eclipse as well. I'd say there's certainly a kind of all eclipses have a chaotic flavor to them, but this one has potential to be less white knuckling, I would say, and more like, oh wow, that's happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, but it's actually okay, or something like that. Now, don't quote me on that because everybody's experience is going to be different, but I would like to think that an exalted Venus ruling these eclipses will at the very least say, well, I want it this way because this way is nicer and prettier and more relaxing. And then, that might be the challenge, or that might be the delight, depending, right? What are you're laughing, Katie?
I could offer an alternative theory too, because
sure.
I noticed how Mars and Venus seem to work together to mitigate pressure, at least for me, in Aquarius. So I almost wonder if Diva Venus is walking into Pisces demanding stuff. And you got, big boy Jupiter, and you got big old Neptune over there going, I don't know. And she's like, you know what? I got my boy back here. Don't make me call him. Like, I wonder if there's going to be like a step into that diva moment.
I think so, but I don't think that Neptune and Jupiter would be like, well, I think they'd be like, if you here, let's dial it up to 100. Oh, you think you're a diva? Here, meet me, biggest planet, and Neptune, which is like ether. Like, let's just explode the universe with diva energy. I feel like it's like maximum diva. I don't know. It's kind of too much of an aphorism. There's not enough contained in that. I did write some notes down if you wanted to.
I would just say I've seen my daughter, my youngest daughter, which everybody's afraid of.
I love her.
She's a little miniature little nugget, and she scares the hell out of people.
She doesn't scare me, but I am Vicky.
Does she have Venus, Jupiter?
I have to look at her chart. I haven't looked at hers in forever. She is a Leo moon, a Gemini ascendant, and a Scorpio 6th house sun.
Nice.
Yeah, she's a force to be reckoned with. And she nonstop talker. She is a quick-witted little kid. and she's tough as nails.
Mm-hmm.
But the Leo moon shows up a lot. I've noticed a lot of the Leo moon tendencies of that underlying anxiety and needing to, not needing to like show off, but needing to be appreciated. Something
Yes.
is done, it needs to be recognized because that's part of her self-worth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But just back to that theme of diva, I can almost see Venus doing this. And again, what I say never happens, so it's probably not going to. But
Well, there is
I
a
can
chance
see
though
it.
to talk about the drawbacks of a diva Venus, or maybe we could say the drawbacks of an exalted Venus. We were talking about this a little bit earlier before we began recording. There is a Venus in Pisces native that I know who feels continuously compelled to give to others, because that Venus is like, I can do it. There's just like this, sure, I can always do it because I'm exalted and I don't know my limits, and that is an entirely different flavor from give to me. It's instead, the challenge is when to stop giving. And that's kind of, it's an unusual territory for exalted planets, because there is, I read Alice Sparkly Cat. They have a blog. They wrote a really excellent article about exalted planets as feeling needing to strive 100% of the time. And if there's that impetus of never being able to stop and it's giving, then there's like no ability to receive. There's no room for that to even happen, right? And then it becomes kind of like, torturous, right? This forever giving and thinking that it's possible, and then experiencing the kind of shock and I would say disappointment, but I think it goes far beyond that. The kind of like despair of reaching your limit when really you didn't think that you had any. That's the other side of an exalted planet is, no, I don't have any limits. And I think that anybody who's got a planet that's in a sign where they're exalted has to grapple with that in some way or another, whether it's the diva learning to hang back for a minute, or it's the Venus that gives and gives, and learning to say, you know what, I don't have any for you right now. I need for me,
Well, when your whole identity is based on what you can do and you can no longer do it, you have no identity.
Right.
That's a very, very powerful way of showing it. And it ties very well into the themes that I've been experiencing with Venus in the 5th house, because I've been burning myself out working on a project that is meant to be very helpful. It's meant to be something that should help a lot of people, but it's like killing me to write it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's material that needs to get out there, but it's not easy, and it's trudging up all kinds of painful memories, leaving me feeling angry and resentful and just listless by the end of the day. But it's got to get done.
It's sucking the energy out of you.
Yeah, it's got to get done, because it is going to be a good thing.
Yes.
I know what the end goal is, but right now just slogging through it is really rough.
Yeah.
That sounds rough.
Yeah. If I was close, I'd hug you.
All right, do we have a happy transit to talk about?
So I think so, actually.
Cool.
A couple of transits. First, we did mention that Mars is going into Pisces on April 14th. The thing to remember here is that Mars has been in Saturn's territory for a while. December? Now I need to go back and think. I meant to look it up and I didn't. Mars went through Capricorn, and then Mars went through Aquarius. And that was about 4 months, I think, ish. That is a structured, ambitious, very stately sort of energy. By the book. Even if it's Aquarius, I'm still going to say that at least Aquarius follows its own rules.
Thank you. I was going
So-
to say it's not
Mhm.
society's book; it's the universe's
But
book.
it's still the
Yes.
book. So it's a fixed sign. And is kind of when Mars goes into Pisces as Jupiterian water really loves being subversive. Like that's just delicious and wonderful. So now Mars gets slippery and has it goes from being motivated by results to being motivated by possibilities. It's a totally different feel. And how can it's not so much like a trickster energy as it is kind of a I would say kind of a gotcha, but not even like it's you wouldn't realize the gotcha until it had already gone. That kind of
Mhm.
energy, like, no, wait a second. And Mars is long gone, going somewhere else. So
Mhm.
all of this rule abiding, these morals, these ideals, this structure, the shoulds, it's like, forget it. All bets are off. And there's a lot of flexibility. And I feel like that, along with Venus Neptune conjunction on the 27th, those two in Pisces and Neptune there can really lend itself to very interesting character development in writing. What are the motivations? What are the desires? Here's Neptune going, sky's the limit. Heck, no, not even that, And there's a lot of chance to be creative and subversive and really get kind of slippery with what might otherwise be our own kind of structure. Whether that structure is being pantsers and that's the way I always do it, like fine, maybe that doesn't have a structure in itself, but if it's the same way you've always done it, then that's its own structure or whatever. I'm only mentioning that because I've heard you guys say that you are pantsers. I think you both. Anyway, so the point is though, there's this really, really slippery energy that has a way like water to drip through all the cracks that, that we haven't had with Mars for the past few months. And it's coming up. And I'm excited for it. The only problem is it isn't very direct. And so if you can kind of roll with funky reasons for doing things or weird ideas, then very novel and creative results can come from that.
I'm starting to. Oops, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I literally have the Muse speaks as my note for that transit.
Oh, that's good. I'm starting to have dreams about my stories.
Oh, that's so cool.
Which I haven't for a while. I'm like, oh, thank God. So, I have the beats that I want to do, but this is giving me some more internalized direction. And as you say, it's kind of slippery because it's not really clear, but it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So it's already starting for me on that. But as I said, before we started, I'm sort of like in a tough place this week. It's just started last night. Last night was Friday. Yes, last night when I actually had a night's sleep without the dog on my bed. That I had the dream about that. So I woke up and I was kind of excited. So, but yeah, the Muse speaks. So hopefully that is.
That would be nice.
Yes.
I also have Mercury Uranus conjunction with notes of intuition meeting quick wit.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be another day that might prove good for writing.
Good.
Yeah, Uranus changes the game. So Mercury Uranus could change the plot. Or you could just change your mind about something. When Mercury Uranus come in contact, I find that me personally, I have trouble sleeping and trouble relaxing. However, Mercury in Taurus, you can kind of mitigate that by body oriented, like moving your body or getting into your body in order to help your mind wind down. Because Mercury in Taurus is going to want to communicate through sensory means, or at least kind of process, take a bath, you'll have an idea, get a nice
Take a
sleep, you have
walk.
an idea.
Yep.
Yes.
Take a nice long walk. I can't wait for that.
Go shopping, don't spend too much, have an idea,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Shower thoughts. Those are always the
Yes.
waterproof pad or something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Best ideas in the shower.
Yeah, with the little waterproof thing, it would be really nice to write on the tiles and have it.
The crayons.
Yeah.
The crayons for
And
the
then,
kids.
wipe it off later. Okay. There's an idea that kind of went.
That's perfect though. I think that's really cool. Yeah, especially just in whatever way you can be relaxed, or even like having a really good meal, have an
Mhm.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or taking things a little bit slower, have an idea. Yeah.
So there's some potential for good inspiration in writing, even in the midst of the Venus drama. I expected different, and I'm not mad. I find it interesting how the expectations get twisted, and it makes it almost fun each month. So look at the transits and plot out what I think is going to happen, and then go back and go, well, I was right here, I was wrong here, I was right here, I was wrong here, and then tweak it again for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun exercise.
And it absolutely is for somebody from the outside going, okay, this is what, we forecast. This is where it varied. But did it really vary?
Yeah, finding the common thread is really interesting, I think.
Yes.
And it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who is more experienced to clarify, because then, I bounce ideas around, but I don't have the baseline yet. I don't have enough educational foundation. So I need somebody I can bounce the ideas off of that knows better to help me figure out maybe what I'm missing.
I would push against that idea of knowing better and just simply say knowing different, or at the very least having an idea that is perhaps a little more fleshed out for contrast, right? Because we might have disagreements about what something might mean, and my idea may have I have sat with it for a longer time or whatever. But that's still really useful in the development of other ideas that come into contact with it, like, oh, I heard, 100% of your reasons for this thing, and I don't agree with it at all. However, hearing that has helped me either solidify my position or tweak things here and there. So I think kind of I don't know that I would call it knowing better. I really push against the value judgments, because I feel like it's too... our lives are too different, and
I know I have not studied actively as long, so I don't have as much muscle memory in this as you would. For instance, you've been doing it longer.
So I have. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and I look at it as I see the different opinions, and I like seeing the different perspectives and the ways that it can be looked at. Because that, again, just like you said, it helps me see something different as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's not just a right or wrong, it's like a different flavor, a different layer over the top of. And for me, it's fun. It's intriguing. It keeps me active in doing this every month. It keeps me interested in learning more. And, it becomes a nice hobby that I can break away from too. Because it's a lot of heavy thought processing, writing, perfecting things. I need something fluffy that I can kind of can go and enjoy. Astrology's not fluffy, but still.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is and it isn't. It depends on who you talk to and where.
That is very true. I try and find the fun in it, though.
Yes.
I do think it's fun, and I think there's something about being able to poke fun at something that allows us to see it in ways that find truth that might otherwise be too scary. Comedy circumvents some things that we have judgments around, and perhaps for good reason. Not all comedy is great. But the idea of comedy is that you are allowed to point to the thing that we don't want to talk about and make a joke about it, which gives access, right? So making astrology fluffy, or at the very least a way to relax oneself, I think is super awesome. And it, you don't always hear, and I'm not just saying that that's the only reason that you engage astrology, but that being a total benefit seems less popular these days. It could be that I'm not exposed to as many varied opinions as I would like to be, though. I just want to qualify that real quick.
Well, if you're on Astro Twitter.
Or even just reading ancient texts, which seem to have like no sense of humor at all. So, and that's, it's probably an anachronistic read, I don't understand the context of the time, but I still get, my eyes are rolling like, okay, Valens,
Oh, yeah. I wonder if you could go back in time, how they would have actually spoke and what their sarcasm would have been like. Because they had to have been sarcastic.
Yes.
Yes, there will, if you know how to read the language, there's a lot of, what's the term? Shit posting? Is that the right term? There's a lot of mudslinging. There's a lot of mudslinging in like Aristotle really hated Pythagoras. Like he just he just couldn't and Heraclitus also really. Heraclitus was just like, and other people like Pythagoras are just stupid, And this is in my philosophy text, the translations of the fragments of the pre-Socratic. Anyway, so it's there, but I kind of wish it were easier to access and didn't have to be mined. Maybe that's part of the pleasure of finding it, is that you do all this, very serious work, and then you come across somebody just,
slinging mud.
Yes, that's right.
No matter where you go, there's some form of Twitter out there.
Yes.
People are just mad dogging everybody. And again, I approach, if you see my Twitter profile, it literally says, this is where I go to blow off steam. This is not the professional version of me, because I go to Twitter to blow off steam. I have fun liking things. I make random comments. I go there as a fun exercise.
I don't go there very often.
I don't treat it as anything serious, and I can enjoy it, again, from that level. If I approach it with that, I'm going to go have fun, and I'm going to go like and share and say stupid things. Okay.
Yeah.
I can enjoy it better.
True.
I have not been that successful. I'm like, this can be short and meaningful.
No.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I come across one in a million and I'm like, oh, look, it's possible. But then, for some reason, I'm not able to live up to my standard, and I lose my temper sometime and go, so.
You can think your way into a beautiful post. Nobody will see it. You can post a stupid meme and everyone loves it. Going with memes.
Yep.
I gave up a long time ago trying to be poignant. Just, you know what? We're going to do memes now.
Yeah.
Because it's an outlet. It's the way I approach it, because that's the way I can deal with it.
And definitely has its own place, for sure. Like just because I don't do Twitter well doesn't mean I think that Twitter shouldn't exist the way it does or whatever. It's just I'm just not very built for that space. Yes.
It's not for everybody. But then again, social media is really not good for us.
Right.
It's really, as much as it brings us together, it causes, I think, a lot more problems than it solves.
There is a lot of research on that, with kind of like varying outcomes, more leaning towards a sense of alienation, through like you're connected but not really.
Right.
On the other hand, there are certain benefits to being able to connect in a virtual space as well. It's kind of it's a baby in bathwater situation.
I don't think we're responsible enough for that, though.
Like we like humans, or we like this group?
Yeah, humans in general. We are not responsible enough to handle the social aspect in the positive way, because 90% of what it's used for is, like you said, shit posting.
Yep, griping and shit posting and
all of this
starting an argument
knowledge at our fingertips and the ability to contact somebody on the other side of the world. And what do? We call each other out, we troll each other, and we post cat memes.
I mean, cat
Yes.
memes sort of redeems the whole project as far as I'm concerned.
There is nothing wrong with cat memes. But I mean, that's pretty much what we use it for.
Mhm.
I'm not 100% on board, although I see where you're coming from. I have
But
faith in humanity to my detriment, but I do. No,
Mhm.
yeah.
Such an Aquarius.
So on that bright note, I like that we end on such a nice, I have faith in humanity. I do too. I'm more of a, glass half full than glass half empty person as well.
We're all
Thinking of stuff.
doomed. Again, though, my week has been colored by trauma, 100%
Yes.
trauma. So
Yes,
I'm
yes,
not able to
yes.
see the glass right now.
Right. You're seeing the fires outside the window, not the glass.
The glass got knocked over a while ago. But this has been good. I've enjoyed going over the transits with you, Renee. I love having you on here. You bring a very good perspective, so I hope we can bring you back again. And I
Thanks.
will
Yeah, I'd love that.
make sure that your link is posted in our show notes about 10 minutes after I finish this and I can download it. We'll make sure that it's all up. We'll do the audio podcast and I'll send you that link. And hopefully we can join up again in the coming months and check and see where we're at, see how mean or nice Venus has been to us.
I'm
Yes.
looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Definitely.
Thanks
Thank you for
listening,
coming.
all.
Now, next week, guys, for those of you who are still watching, Jane, I know you're off,
Yes.
but Derek reached out to me with his audio narrator about the,
Dino Rift.
yeah. He's like, can I come bring my audio narrator on to talk about this? And I'm like, yeah. So we're going to be doing that one next week. So I will be back. Jane, I know you're going to be out, but after that, I believe we've got some more fun stuff planned.
Yes. I would say if I can try, if we're home, I will pipe in.
Derek is always fun.
But I'm not going to guarantee it because we're at my daughter's house and it's not fondue.
Totally understandable. Totally understandable.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys again,
Renee.
and we'll be back next week. Everybody